Today, we have the opportunity to talk with a living legend. Hey, peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. I am the entree musician, and so are you. And what I said is absolutely true. We are blessed to have an incredible conversation with the one and only Bobby Fulton, a legend in rock and soul. Bobby has been in this industry for many, many decades. He's a singer, songwriter, musician, and producer. He's the founding member of the Emperors. If you remember the Emperors from the late 50s into the 60s, that's how far back we're going. Now, the Emperors had a huge, huge hit called Karate, which was covered by none other than Carlos Santana. So when I say big, I mean big. Bobby is the founding partner of Soulville-Jaywalking Records, a record label he started in the early 60s. So he knows this music industry inside and out. And if you know anything about the entree musician at all, you know that we love to honor those to whom we're standing on their shoulders. And Bobby is one such gentleman. You would recall that we lost Vance Anderson about a year and a half ago. He was a founding member of the entree musician. Vance spent 20 plus years of his life as the road manager for the Tony Bennett. And he would always drop jewels of wisdom on us through his experiences. We've had the opportunity here on this podcast to interview Ron Moss, who was road manager and also label president for Chick Corea. And Ron Moss shared wonderful, wonderful memories. Unfortunately, he passed on as well. And most recently, we lost a dear friend and keyboardist Chris Jasper from the Isley Brothers and Jasper Isley, Jasper Isley. I'm saying it backwards, but Chris was a blessing to us and came on the Entree Musician several times to help spread some knowledge. So, these are stories that are kind of sealed now that these men have moved on. But we still have living legends, like I said, with what we're going to do today and talking with Mr. Bobby Fulton. And we've also interviewed Roy Wooten of the wonderful Wooten Brothers. And what a great interview that was. Go back and check that out. We've also interviewed Bunny Brunel, amazing bassist who's been in the game for years. Bob Baldwin, who else? We've also interviewed Byron Miller, Psycho Bass, who played with Joe Sample and with Herbie Hancock and the legendary George Duke. So that's what we're about. And so you're going to love the conversation that we're going to enjoy with Bobby Fulton. So, grab a cup of coffee, unless you can have some coffee while you're driving, but kick it in, because I'm telling you, we are about to walk down memory lane. I am honored beyond words that I can have a conversation with the one and only Bobby Fulton, who is absolutely a legend in the music industry, putting Pennsylvania on the map for many of us. I'm telling you, his contribution to music is large, and we're going to have just a wonderful conversation, getting to know who he is so that you can take his legend further. Without further ado, Brother Bobby, man, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so grateful you're here with me today.
Hey, praise God. I'm glad to be here. And I just have so much respect for you. And I'm honored myself just to be here, in your presence.
I appreciate that, man. I do. And I know that we've talked many times off air. I'm grateful, even, man, going back, perhaps I want to say, boy, time is flying, maybe 20 years ago when we were in Pittsburgh with our group. And I was blessed to be able to be introduced to you by Kevin Amos and
Yeah,
Bob Davis from Soul Patrol. And so,
yes.
they turned me on to the history that you had. And it's interesting how you've been a pioneer. And in many ways, paralleled some of the dreams that I've had. So I'm pulling up the rear, but you've already done the trailblazing and really put forth the effort as far as soul music is concerned, rock and roll, and just the whole gamut of what we now know as Black soul music. You have been at the forefront of that. And I just want to hear your story, man. And I think your story is a treasure just to share with our audience. So wherever you want to begin, let's begin there. And I'll pick out some questions that you may trigger from me as you tell us the history of what you were blessed to be able to do.
Well, let me say this, since I've met you and have been following you, I see so much of myself in you and what you've been doing. I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you.
And I'm so, I wish I had some tissues, which all of a sudden I do not, because I feel like my eyeglasses are starting to tear up
Oh,
a little
no.
bit, but and we have to go on anyway. I'm honored.
I'm honored. It's my honor, brother. Absolutely. I guess the first question I would ask is, when did you know? I mean, oftentimes, especially as far as musicians are concerned, our calling is very early. Like, it's settled into us as a little kid that this is exactly what we want to do. How did you know that music was going to be the path that chose you? I could say you chose it, but in your case, I know music chose you. When was that?
It chose me way before I even realized it. You almost said it. You mentioned the word kid.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was in the first grade, I knew that this songwriting was going to be a part of my life.
Yes, sir.
That was really the beginning. Uh, Stephen Foster had a song out called Jeannie with the Light Brown Hair. And there was a kid in my class named Jeannie, and we were friends. And I was caught up in that song because of her.
Wow.
So I knew about the songwriting at that time
Yes,
because I
sir.
used to experiment with myself to see if I could write a melody like that
Wow.
in amongst myself. So I
What
would say that
instrument did you start out on then? What was you were you plucking away at the piano, or did you have a guitar, or
I
how were you
was
trying to
running
come
my
up?
fingers. I
Oh
was
yeah?
running my fingers across the piano. We had a piano. My brother, who was 7 years older than me, he was taking lessons.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't even know at that time that my father played, but he was away in the service
Okay.
uh, early on. So, but my father played, and my mother's sisters played.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My mother and her sister, they were twins, identical twins, and they had a reputation. So early on in my life, this music story actually began because they had such a reputation, because people were always telling me everywhere I go, your mother and the twins could really sing. And we used to travel. Well, later on, we traveled back to New York because my mother's sister moved to New York City,
I
and
see.
she lived in Harlem. So New York is a part of my story too,
I
early
see.
on.
I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that.
But most of it was the church,
Mm-hmm.
the talents that was that I heard in the church. I couldn't believe it. As I got older, I realized that the music industry existed, but not too much for gospel.
I see.
As I got older and I became more attuned to my mother's background, because we had records and she had all of the gospel recordings at that time.
Yes, sir.
And she really loved it. And I still have that treasure right now. That's my primary treasure of my mother physically.
Wow.
I have her. It's a notebook, like a book that has the 78
Yes, sir.
records in there. A couple of them are broken, but I
Wow.
still have that book
Can you
that I
name
hold
some of
on
the
to.
groups? Could you name some of the groups that you can remember from those 78s? I
Well,
know
one of them that,
younger kids or younger people who are, unless they Google it, they won't know what a 78 record is. But man, the
yeah,
RPM was at the 78
yes,
speed. Those records were thick as pancakes.
yes,
The
yes.
needle was as big as my finger.
Actually, I should have had it right here. I wasn't even thinking about it at that time. But one group that really stands out with me because when I was on the radio, I was playing her records, and the angelic gospel singers
Mm,
go way back to that time period.
yes, sir.
And I was playing their records,
Wow.
and I was seeing her and her group uh, on TV recently or on the internet.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Mahalia Jackson, and I can't remember. I believe I mentioned somebody to you the last time I was talking to you, but I can't even think of his name right now. The Davis sisters,
The Davis sisters, yes, sir.
yeah, but there was some older records, I guess, that seemed to me anyway. Um, I don't know if it was a Joe May. I don't know where I get that name from.
Joe May.
Uh, yes, or something like. I don't know if that's the proper name
Joe
or
May.
not. And what's so funny is the book is so close to me right now. I can't grab it, but I wish I could pull it up right now so I could pull, some of that out for you and even let you see it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, one day, well, this won't be our last conversation, and one day we're going to have to dive, deeper into that. I do remember, however, the last time we talked, you were telling me some of the changes that happened when you approached high school that really deepened your desire that, yep, I'm on the right track, and you got with your first professional situation that really opened up a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, well, actually, I was around 11 or 12,
Hmm.
actually 13. I was in church. This was gospel groups,
Yeah,
quartets
yeah.
were big at the
Absolutely.
time.
Yes,
And there
sir.
was this fantastic program at our church, Greater Zion Baptist Church, Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg.
Hmm.
And my buddy, friend, he and his name was Donald Brantley,
Donald Bradley.
Reverend Reverend Donald Brantley. It ended up being he and I were walking out of church, and the program was so uh, touching. I'm trying to find the right word. I
Yes, sir.
can't really describe it, but I remember speaking to him just like I'm speaking to you right now. I said, Donald, we ought to start a group. He agreed. He said, yeah, we ought to. I can't remember exactly what his words were, but he did say, in fact, there's some of us singing on a program at school. He was at William Penn Senior High, and I was still in junior high.
Ah,
I was the youngest guy in the group.
yes, sir.
So he said, I'll tell them, see what they have to say. So next thing I know, they all agreed. Let's start a group.
Let's do it.
So we met at the Foster Street YMCA. That was the
Mm.
main Y there for us,
Yes, sir.
and very historical place itself. And so we were having rehearsal there, and we had to decide on a name, man. We knew we could sing, you know what I mean? I
Right.
have to say, have to say that, brag a little bit, you know. And so we had to decide on a name, and we threw out a lot of names, but one name came up, the Emperor.
The
Oh, the
Emperor.
Emperors, man, we could clean ourselves up, have because this group, the Turbans, was out at the time. We're gonna have some kingly stuff on. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
sir.
that's how the name Empress came about. And because these uh, five guys, including myself, were, well, let's just say this. We were ahead of our time.
Yes,
They
sir.
were in high school. I was in junior high school. And a couple of them graduated. By the time I got to high school, there was only one original left.
Understood.
So I had started a group in junior high school called the Carpets. And that was my first live engagement outside of the Y and outside of high school for the Seroptimus Club, which was this famous women's club uh, in the city.
Yes, sir.
And the music teacher in junior high school, she was really a great friend of ours. She would allow us to rehearse in the music room.
Yes, sir.
We thought we were really special, man. Something's going on here, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
and she arranged this engagement for us for her club. She was a part of it
Yes, sir.
at the Harrisburg Hotel. Man, this was big time for us. And just in junior high school,
Right.
singing acapella, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that was engagement number one. And then she would even let me get out of school to go over to William Penn to appear on the shows there with other guys while they were still in high school. You know, that was super, man. I thought, wow, I'm going somewhere. You have to forgive me because I'll be laughing here
I
myself. You know
understand.
what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so you have to forgive me. I have so many memories, man,
Yes, sir.
because and actually all of us was playing sports at the time in junior high school.
Mm-hmm.
And in the ninth grade, we were the champions of Central Pennsylvania. We beat all the high schools throughout Central Pennsylvania, York, Lancaster, you know,
Yeah,
all them other cities. You know what I mean? So we were really on cloud nine in many different ways. You know. So
certainly.
here we go to high school, and so several of us we became the emperor.
Mm.
Uh, from the Carpets, we went to William Penn, and there was only Donald still there.
Mm.
Donald was a famous lead singer, though. He sang
Uh,
falsetto, and he was
yeah.
just super guy,
So was this a
person.
quartet or quintet? You mind me
It
asking?
was a quintet. It
Quintet.
was a
Okay.
quintet.
Okay.
Yes,
So you guys were patterning
quintet.
yourself after the Temptations, or in that
Yeah,
frame of reference.
at the time, the biggest song for us was "1,000 Miles Away."
Uh,
So whatever that group was, we were we sang just like the record.
yes,
We
sir.
just didn't have the music band behind us, but we had all the singing.
Yes, sir.
And I like to mention who the originals were:
Certainly. By all means.
Donald Brantley, Furman Clark, William Bill Dillon,
Mhm.
Billy Dillon, we called him. My cousin, my first cousin, Cricket. His name was Elvin Fulton
Okay.
Jr.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Elvin Fulton. But my brother had given him a nickname that followed him throughout his life, and that was Cricket,
Cricket.
Jiminy Cricket. He was known as Cricket. And
Certainly.
so and myself. So we were the original emperor,
Yes, sir.
and then we went to high school, and the Carpets had David Peterson, who was and James Pepsi Jackson, and Billy Green.
Hmm.
Actually, when we ended up on TV, they had a local TV program called TV Teen Time.
Uh-huh.
It was very a popular show for teenagers
Yes,
in the
sir.
city at that time.
Hmm.
And we ended up on there by popular demand. I have to say, because the show had existed for a while, but somehow the people said we deserved to be on there. So
Oh yeah,
we ended
that's
up
great.
on there. And Pepsi was our bass singer. He was soft. And I'd like to get into how I met him, but that's for another time.
Yes, sir.
But God brought us together. And
Mm.
this, I like to say this because from the beginning of the Emperors, like I said, we were inspired by the church
Yes, sir.
and all of the great talent in the church.
Yes, sir.
And so Pepsi uh, was special to me because I was just walking down the street one day and he had just moved to Harrisburg from Mount Union, PA. And we just clicked. You know how back in the day we would speak to one another. Not
Absolutely.
much like people today in the community, especially in the West Coast, man. When I was out there and I was 19 and people didn't even say hello to one another. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I spoke to Pepsi and he invited me over. He was sitting on his step and he invited me in, told me his story, life story, because he was, I believe his father at that time, he was 12 or 13, and his father had passed. I
I
don't know, in
see.
the military or whatever, and he was living with his mother.
Yes, sir.
But he invited me in, and this is what I remember about Pepsi. Jackson
Hmm.
was his name, and James Pepsi Jackson. Pepsi
Yes,
was
sir.
his nickname.
Yes, sir.
And but he played records. He played gospel records.
Hmm.
And this is what was special about our unique relationship because we both love gospel
Yes,
in the
sir.
church. And where he came from, Mount Union, was unique because the lady who owned the record company, the record store, the popular record store, Martha in Harrisburg, Martha's Turntable, she was from Uniontown. So
Okay.
I just figured there might be some connection there, you know. Anyway, and he had all these gospel records, these quartets and Mahalia Jackson. I thought maybe he was related to Mahalia Jackson or something, you know. But we used to love to sing gospel, and that's how I learned that Pepsi sang.
Mm,
Because he wasn't a member of the Carpets in junior high school, but he played football with us.
I
And
see.
uh, and so when we went to senior high school, and Billy Green, well, Pepsi became the bass singer because of our relationship.
Yes,
And
sir.
uh, and as I was saying, TV Teen Time was on, and we were on the one time, and somehow or another, Billy Green, who sang tenor along with me, Donald, he had his two front teeth knocked out,
Oh.
and he refused to go on television. You know
Oh.
that was big, man.
Yeah,
We had to make some change there,
I see.
and and at that time, Harrisburg was like, I want to watch what I say here, but we knew everybody knew everybody.
Understood.
So, Edgar Moore, this is when he became a member of the Emperor. Edgar could sing every voice.
Mm.
He could dance every dance. Come on,
Wow.
you have to forgive me. I have to laugh. He could dance every dance. He could sing every song. He could just do it all, you know. And
Yeah.
he reminded me of comedian right now. I can't think of his name right now. You get in these situations and you
Sure,
can't,
sure.
but
But a
anyway,
comedian from back in the day there?
no, today's
Oh,
comedian.
today. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. He has his family show comes on. I can't even think of it right now. He
Okay.
was one of the five kings of
Of
comedy.
comedy. Okay.
Yeah. But
Uh
anyway,
the brother the neighborhood? How come I
yeah,
can't?
the neighborhood, that's
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Edgar reminded me of him, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And
sir.
uh, but so Edgar joined the group, and when I'm thinking of Edgar, I'm thinking of a whole bunch of other things come to mind. But
Yes,
I'm
sir.
trying to keep this
Oh,
in
I
line with
understand.
what you're asking me. And but Edgar lived uh, a couple blocks away. You know, when you know so much about people, and I know so much about uh, it was like I when I was a kid, I thought I knew everybody in town, you know, and everything about
You might have. You might.
that was me. That's the way I was because I I tried to do that. I tried to know everybody and know everything. My wife now, she would tell you if she was here talking, she said, he thinks he knows everything. So, again, so Edgar Moore and I were real tight, but Edgar was older than all of us.
Yes, sir.
He was a couple years older. I think he had already went to college for a couple years, but
Hmm.
he happened to be home right then, and he was and his neighbor, a gentleman who was, I believe he was a detective, Mr. Glenn Taylor was his name. And I want to acknowledge that because he was the only adult that took a real interest in us at the
I see.
time when we were kids.
Yes, sir.
Edgar, I mean, Mr. Glenn Taylor, he's no longer with us, but he, the one that brought Edgar to us, or somehow or another, he lived right next door to Edgar, or right down the street or something.
Yes, sir.
And Edgar lived directly across the street from another church. It
Hmm.
was popular at that time and had good music there. But he joined the group. So we ended up on TV Teen Time.
Yes, sir.
And we even got our first college engagement, man. This is when we got our uniforms, man.
All right.
And because we had to be clean when we went to Philadelphia to the Philadelphia Hotel. Come on now, we still in high school. You know, that was a big thing. And
Yep.
16 Candles was out then, you know.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we had this reputation for, we sounded mighty close to the record, you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
that was big. And then uh, during that same time, the first big 33 football
Mm.
uh, extravaganza in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania versus Ohio
Uh-huh.
at that time, and was taking place, and we were invited to sing.
Mm.
I don't even know how that came about. Mr. Glenn must have worked that out. But Bill Haley and the Comets was the featured group,
Yes, sir.
and we were opening for Bill Haley and his Comets, and they
Uh-huh.
were number one in the country with "Rock Around the Clock" was their big song, and another guy, um, Peter Palmer, was the star of this movie, Little Abner.
Hmm.
Little Abner was a big comic strip in the newspaper
Yes, sir.
at that time. So you couldn't tell us nothing then, you know what I mean? And we were meeting all the football players and, you know, high school. Sandy Stevens was playing for Uniontown
Hmm.
at the time. And the most valuable defensive player in the whole state was one of our friends in our club because we had a club. Because at the time, we didn't have no fraternities or anything. So we had this club called the Los Companeros because one
Wow.
of the guys took Spanish or something.
Yes, sir.
And he came up with that name. It stood for companions, you know.
Yes, sir.
So that was our the biggest thing as far as high school was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the foundation of the Emperors. The Emperors were really established then.
Understood.
Because what happened was guys graduated. Donald ended up in the Navy. David was a paratrooper in the Army. And then I ended up in the Marine Corps.
I see.
And,
Well, thank you for
and
serving
I was
the
the
country.
last one to get out.
Yes, sir.
And even when I was stationed at Cherry Point, North Carolina, I was in the Marine Air Wing. And so I was in helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive me.
That's quite all right.
Goes back.
Well,
I was
thank you
in the
for
first
serving our
Marine
country. I want to honor that. Thank you for your service.
I was in the
Absolutely.
first Marine Helicopter Squadron to Vietnam, believe it or not.
Yes, sir.
And so I was blessed just to be here. I'm blessed every day, man. Thank you, Lord.
Amen.
Anyway,
Amen.
Um,
when you return,
it was during my last year when I came back. It was my last year in the military.
Yes, sir.
So I was down in North Carolina, Cherry Point, and I would go home on the weekends because the group had started up before I got out of the service.
Okay.
They regrouped. And now this is the interesting thing. When we went to Philadelphia for that college, University of Pennsylvania, I believe
sir.
we appeared for, and the kids in the neighborhood was following us. And I remember this particular scene, man, where these kids was following us and we were catching a bus or something. And we had our uniforms though, and in the bags. And these kids came up, and one of them was my cousin, Milton Brown. This is important.
Yes, sir.
And his buddy Tyrone. Tyrone said he was the vocal one, you know. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're the Little Emperor. I'll never forget it. He said, we're the Little Emperor. Man, that really touched my heart. I never forgot it. You know, that we were touching the lives of, because these guys was like 6 or 7 years younger than us. Yeah. Than me anyway. I was 16, 15, turned 16, wow. You know.
Yes, sir.
And so like I said, when I was in North Carolina and they had started this group, Milton and Tyrone had formed a band. Milton was on the organ, Tyrone was playing the drums. Mm. And another guy named Ronnie Bowers, I didn't know it at the time, but I found this out recently. He was in the Army at the time.
I see.
And he was coming home to play in the band, you know what I mean? Wow. So they had become the Emperor's band.
Wow.
Ager was leading the group at that time. And my cousin Cricket was still singing because he was in the military off and on. When he got out, he was much older, but he's still, once an emperor, you're always emperor. Like the Marines, once a Marine, you're always a Marine. So anyway, and we were like family, man. We all grew up, hung out together, went to church together.
Yes, sir.
It was that community, the way communities ought to be now. Everything's so far away, you know.
Sure.
But anyway, so I would go home on the weekends and sing with the group. And when I came out the service, it was like, oh, everything was back together again. Because everybody, and at the time, there's one more thing about junior high school and high school. There was this DJ in Harrisburg, popular at the time, who was signing groups. And he was really after us at the time, but we could never work anything out because we didn't really have, and this was, Mr. Glenn was still around, but we didn't have what we call an official manager or agent or
Yes, sir.
anything like this. We was handling all the business ourselves, you know. And I was going around to the distributors trying to learn the business, learn what I could find out, you know what I mean, how records are distributed,
Yeah.
etc. We didn't even have records at the time,
Yeah.
but this DJ was trying to sign us. His name was Paul Landersman,
Okay.
and he actually got run out of Harrisburg
Hmm.
because of payola at that time. But
Ah.
this was before this happened. He wanted to record us, and he could never get us to sign. He ended up signing the Quintones. Come on now, I'm telling you something here. He
Yeah.
signed the Quintones, and they had a couple of hit records.
Oh
So
wow.
then uh, he finally got us to say yes, we'll record. So he took us to Philadelphia, and we recorded in this. We didn't even have a band. Let me tell you, we didn't have no band.
Mm.
And there was a guy named Pancho Villa. He was a popular drummer at that time, and he hooked up a lot of groups in Philadelphia
Yes.
at that time. And he and I became real close too in later years.
Yes, sir.
But so we recorded. They had a little booth where we recorded vocals and stuff like that.
Yes,
And
sir.
but the record was put out. It was just a demo. But this Paul Landersman, he burnt that demo up.
Wow.
I mean, playing it.
Yes, sir. I
And
understand.
the group became very popular as a result of that. And
Mm-hmm.
we were appearing with uh, Danny and the Juniors. And that was one of the main. We were on TV doing commercial with him. And that was prior to the Bill Haley situation, I
Yes,
think.
sir. So you were
And this,
building up a good
yes,
reputation, which got you the
right,
slot to open for
right.
Bill Haley. Dig
Actually,
it.
yeah, that's what happened.
Yes, sir.
So around that time, because of, I feel a little guilty about what I'm going to say here, but at the same time, I was becoming a little discouraged
Okay.
myself personally. Some of these things I don't even like to say. I'm not even going to say, but
Okay.
what happened was recording was always at the top of my
List of
thinking.
things. Yes,
You
sir.
know, we had, if we're going to reach the world, we have to record. I
Understood.
was already had that vision, man. We're gonna sing and touch the world,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought we all thought that way. That
Mm-hmm.
was my thinking that we all were gonna do this. We were gonna live in our little community. This is me,
Yeah.
my vision. Our
Understood.
families, man, we're gonna have kids and they're gonna it's gonna go on like that.
Yeah.
But none of that turned out the way I envisioned.
I understand.
And I started drifting away myself without saying anything
Mm.
why I was doing this. And there was another guy who lived right down the street from me, a half a block. He was like Johnny Mathis of Harrisburg. I have to, his name was Johnny Clark.
Johnny Clark.
Johnny Clark. Johnny Clark. And now let me tell you, Johnny Clark's still living. He's still my friend. You know what I mean? We're
Wow.
still
That's
close.
great.
But Johnny Clark, man, he was the popular one as far as TV was concerned. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? But at the time, as far as making live appearances around, from place to place, town to town, uh, no one was doing that as far as that we knew, our age group. However, females, I can't leave them out, man. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, they were getting more play. Actually, one of them was in the Empress for a short period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and her name was Betty Simmons. Betty Simmons became a part of the Chanels,
Okay.
spelled Chanels.
Mm-hmm.
This he was in our class too. Anyway, his name would come to me.
Yes, sir.
It's right on the tip of my tongue. But they formed a group.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize that they had a group at that time. But they, other people were interested in singing. They would form a group. And Nathaniel Edmonds, I have to bring up his name. Come
Uh-huh.
on now. Nathaniel Edmonds, for you to have a peer idol, he was my
Wow.
he was my idol. He was a peer. When I went to church every Sunday, this was before junior high school,
Uh-huh.
I had to pass this church. I think it was Church of God in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And this organ was in there playing the most beautiful music, man. And it was Nathaniel Edmonds. I hadn't even met him at that time. But
Wow.
every Sunday when I walked by there, I said, I want to play like that.
Wow. He
My
was
church
big.
was my church was another block down the road, down the street,
Mm-hmm.
And so come to find out, he was the same age as me. And we were in junior high school together and senior high school together. But Nate was playing for everybody. He was
Yes, sir.
playing, and he was popular in the churches at that time. And all the females that was singing, we had Beverly Ann Gibson. You might have heard of her.
I'm sorry I
She
haven't.
she was picked up on Imperial Records, I think it was. Anyway, Nathaniel, first of all, went out of high school. We were all in the same class, actually, classroom, homeroom in high school. When we graduated from high school, Nathaniel had went to uh, the big music school in New York,
Um,
uh, the biggest. Anyway, I can't. It's on tip of my tongue. I can't think of
mm.
it right now. Uh, but anyway, he had went there for a while. Anyway,
Juilliard? Juilliard?
yeah, he went to Juilliard.
Okay.
So he was that good. Nathaniel, man, his melodies and chords, man, was all distinctly different, unique. When he played, you knew you was listening to something.
Certainly.
Anyway, so he was in New York at that time. And believe it or not, he was this is where the story really gets good, better, man. Hey, Nathaniel Edmonds was playing with mm, man. Anyway, it's gonna come to me.
Yes, sir.
I'm shameful that I can't think of it. But
Understood.
he was with All Platinum Records at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And with anyway, Sugar Hill Gang.
Okay.
He helped put that together.
Wow.
He was co-producer under the main guy. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, so Nathaniel, when I went to New York, when I started my group, back to Johnny Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Clark had asked me to around this. I was in this transition from the Emperors,
Yes, sir.
and I was within my mind. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Around that time, Johnny said that he was forming a group. I don't even know how that came about, but he said he asked me would I play for them the piano. Actually, up until that time, I hadn't been playing the piano for anybody.
Oh, wow.
I had just been playing for myself
Yes, sir.
all these years. And when I was in the military, that was my main pastime.
Yeah,
I
just playing
find
piano.
I'd be in the theater by myself, man, playing the piano there and imagining, thousands of people out there, type of thing.
Wow.
This is real. And but I was writing songs. Actually, I had when I was in Memphis, I was I had to go to school at Millington Naval Air Station in Memphis.
Hmm.
And I guess this was around the time the the music company there was building up, but it was starting. But I never got there.
Uh-huh.
But this guy from Memphis always wanted to take me there, but because of the nature of being in the Marines and how things were, I could not ever get there.
Yes, sir.
And what happened was, and this was around the year 1962, 1960.
Okay.
And the timeline is important because around that time they had a drum and bugle corps,
Mhm.
and I joined the drum and bugle corps. In
Yes, sir.
high school, I also was in the band. I played the French horn
Yes,
in
sir.
the band. And this is another thing because Miss Rob, who was our teacher in junior high, referred a couple of us that was in the carpets to the music director at the high school. And
Ah,
he recruited us during the summer to learn these instruments.
yes,
One guy
sir.
learned the tuba, and I learned the French horn.
Right.
And we were the two primary ones who joined anyway. So we were in the high school band, and I was learning about the different instruments, being in different keys and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And and so when I was in Memphis, I was sending out. I used to have these lyric books. They used to sell these lyric books of popular songs at that time,
Yes,
and
sir.
I would find a piano and I'd be using these lyric books to sing these different songs. Man, I used to entertain the troops there, that was
Wow.
passing through and stuff like that. And so I decided they had different ads in these books. Send your lyrics, send your songs out to different places to be placed or something. Anyway,
Sure.
I sent, when God gave me these songs, he gave me the music and the lyrics.
Yes, sir.
And so I sent my lyrics out and songs came back. There was nothing like, I said, I
But
got to learn to write the music myself. So that's when I was in Memphis, I started learning to write, to compose my own music.
I dig it.
And so the whole time, so in Memphis, in class, I came out second in the class.
Mm.
And this sergeant, he was not first, but he already had orders to Quantico.
Okay.
And so I had the first choice of duty station.
Wow.
And they had up there on the list, California was the first one. Uh, and I said, California, here I come.
Absolutely.
I said, California, here I come. El Toro Marine Corps Air Station was there.
Hmm.
And so when I went there, they actually, I'm trying to, I have a habit of talking details. I'm trying to skip all the details. But what happened was
Okay.
when they finally got me to a station, it was a helicopter base, which was, it wasn't in Los Angeles, it was in Santa Ana. Man, orange groves right outside the gate.
Mm.
I say I throw that in because, when we went going out, oranges on the trees, we could pick them off the trees. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And that's California was real to me.
Yeah,
And
understood.
whenever I went, took leave, my leave was in L.A.
Mm.
And the bus that took me to L.A. stopped at Disney World. Man, I never forget that, man. Stopped at the gate, the front gate of Disney World, man. And I'm telling you, I was 19 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought, man, God is really blessing me, to
Amen.
see all of this, the Rose Bowl and
Yeah.
all that. All this was taking place while I was there. Anyway, you have to bear with me, man. I'm
It's all
so
good.
much to say. But
Okay.
anyway,
All good.
uh, I decided I need to go to college because I wanted to go, but a whole lot of things happened, man. But somehow I saw a poster or something, and I decided I'm gonna try to find some time to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Santa Ana Junior College. Um, so I enrolled, and I took one class. But in this class, there was a guy there. We met, and of course, the main topic was music. I happened to mention that I was into music, and he was too. And he
Uh-huh.
said, in fact, uh, there's a talent show taking place, and he already had a group there, and he invited me to be in the group.
Wow.
So, and at the time, I was writing my songs, and I wrote this song, man, that we were. I'll never forget you. That was the name of the song. Anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
want to start singing it right now. Anyway, but uh, so we came in second in the show. But what happened was one of my homeboys was there at the show. He was stationed at El Toro, and he was much older than me, but he had been there for a while, and he lived in L.A. because he was married and lived off the base, and he invited to take me to Los Angeles. Man, that was my very first trip in the city. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I
sir.
never forget it. So he took me to meet his wife and everything, and so all of these aspects of life was taking place. The
Mm-hmm.
camaraderie and it's the social aspects that going on now on the internet, man. I was living all of that stuff,
Wow.
networking before that was even popular. This we were living it
Yeah.
uh, all
Yeah.
along as kids.
Yes, sir.
Like I said in Harrisburg, I figured I knew everybody there. All the young people, different high schools they went to, I knew them all. They knew me,
Yeah.
type of thing. And
Absolutely.
and my dad was a deacon. I considered our church was the largest Baptist. I used to say that I took pride in saying I went to the largest Baptist church in Harrisburg.
Harrisburg.
It wasn't, one of them, you know what I mean? But ours was the main one. Hey,
I
hey,
can dig it. I can dig it, bro.
I used to go to my Sunday school, and like the deacons, my dad was a friend of all these deacons. We used to go fishing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad would take me fishing. I'd be the only kid there with the deacons and knowing what's going on, how the deacons do this and do that and
Yeah.
everything. And so I got to know their children and what they were visiting each other and stuff. Hey, I did the same thing. You know what I mean? With my peers.
Right.
So this is how I got to know everybody everywhere.
That's right.
And so this stuff carried on as we got older, took it to LA. Actually, I was about to tell you when they placed me on this helicopter base, it was all helicopters on this base. The jets and things were at El Toro. And at that time, the chaplain's office was right across from my uh, dorm where I stayed. Not using the right words now, but at that time, I was interested in being a chaplain if I could, but that never took place. But that was in my
In your
framework,
heart.
in my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Yeah. And but they asked me when I first went. They said there's a new helicopter squadron forming. and they're going overseas within a year. Would you like to go? Man, I just came from school. I said, yes, I'd like to go overseas.
Yeah.
So after a year, they're training, forming. We spent time in Yuma, Arizona. We were just 29 Palms preparing to go overseas. And everywhere the helicopters went, we went. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all flew together, and
Wow.
so we were going overseas. And I thought, and the reason I'm telling you this is because this relates to today.
Yes, sir.
The Holy Spirit operating in my life.
Yes, sir.
Because God was preparing me way back then, and
Yeah.
He was preparing me really all of my life. I didn't even realize all this in the midst of all of my wrongdoings. Let me say that, because I was a sinner like everybody else.
Absolutely, yes, sir. Understood.
And one thing I didn't do, it didn't make me different, but I think it had a lot to do with my life. I was never a drinker, and alcohol.
Yeah.
I didn't smoke.
Yes, sir.
Those, as far as my health was concerned, I think that has a lot to do with my health today.
Understood.
See, yes, so, but so here we are getting ready to go overseas. Oh, and by the way, I was a storekeeper. All the parts and things for the planes and things, I ordered them. I kept the books. I did all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
I was a naval aviation storekeeper. And so what happened was we were preparing to go overseas. I did fly. My first flight was out of boot camp from Paris Island to Memphis, because I was going to the air wing. They wanted us to know I'm getting ready to fly. I'm getting ready to fly everywhere I go. So that was my first flight. And so when I was going to California, I said, I'm flying to California.
Yeah.
I'm going to fly again. So I flew from Harrisburg to LA, to Chicago, Yuma, Arizona. Let me see. And next thing I knew, I was flying into LA, man. Anyway, so here we are going overseas. I just figured that you could fly straight across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Man, but when I looked up, so I didn't have my camera out because I took pictures everywhere I went. And I had my sea bag in the belly of the plane. I wasn't going to need my camera. Next thing I know, we're flying over Alaska, man. The snow-capped mountains of Alaska that I'd only seen in a magazine, and I didn't have my camera. This was lesson number one. And before we got overseas, we had to refuel. And so they said we'd be able to get off the plane to for a few moments while we were refueling. It was Anchorage, Alaska, man. I looked up, I saw the sun, I saw the moon, I saw the day, I saw the night. Hey, man, I was 19 years old. I said, man, praise God. As I'm talking now, I'm just expressing the awe of what was going on in my life at that time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And next thing I know, we was landing in Tokyo, man. This was a 24-hour trip, because this was a prop plane too, by the way. It wasn't no jet. We was on a prop,
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so we ended up going into Okinawa. That's where it was going to be my home base. And to make a long story short, I'm sharing with you the world travel that was taking place. Next thing I know, we was going aboard ship. Because the Marines, I didn't know all this stuff. This was all new to me. I didn't know what was going on. Absolutely. So anyway, I was just going. We ended up in Hong Kong, man. And a Ling Ting Tong was one of the favorite songs at the time. Ling Ting Tong from Chinatown. I don't know if you're familiar with that song, but that
I'm
was a
not.
popular song at
Wow.
that time. And I remember sitting on the ship one night and just looking into the city. And I was imagining that the songwriter must have been there where
Mm.
I was and there and got the inspiration for that song, Ling Ting Tong, yeah.
Wow.
And like I said, that was my favorite pastime. I was just taking it all in, writing it down. That was what I love to do.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and by the way, on the way to Hong Kong for the first time aboard the ship, they was having a talent show. But hey, so
Can't miss it. Can't miss it, right?
hey, couldn't miss the talent show, man. And mind you, believe it or not, I have pictures of these situations I'm telling you about. Anyway,
Wow.
so and this guitar player, uh, anyway, was in my squadron also. We had some guys in our squadron that had carried two guns, man, because they was practicing for the movies and lost it. Yeah, okay. Anyway, he went to Berkeley, man.
Mm.
He could play that guitar, and I can't think of his name right now.
Mhm.
I know him. I have information on it anyway because
Yes,
he
sir.
played with the one of the popular groups out there. Not a groups, but he's kind of like you right now. He has some kind of music reports.
I see.
Music reports is his thing.
Okay.
Him and his wife. Anyway,
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's for is it for film and TV?
it's for everything.
Musicreports.com?
It's for everything.
Okay.
But, you know.
Okay. Wow.
But anyway, he was playing the guitar and I was on the piano. Somebody was on a snare drum. That was it. And but we was entertaining the troops, man, on the way in that talent show. Somebody took a picture. I don't know who it was, but I ended up with the picture. And uh and so that was a highlight of my first trip to Hong Kong.
My goodness.
And next thing I know, we took several trips to Hong Kong, but we ended up on this other island uh, right before went to Vietnam. It was on April Fool's Day, believe it or not.
Ah.
We had a muster, and the colonel said we was going to Vietnam.
Mm.
Our next stop would be Vietnam.
Now,
So
what year is this here?
this was in 1961,
61. Okay.
1962,
Okay.
1962. We entered Vietnam, South Vietnam.
Wow.
Anyway, uh, and Saigon, I was there in Saigon, man, when it was still Saigon before the name was changed, before it was bombed and all the other kind of
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
But anyway, music took a hiatus at that time,
Yes, sir.
except no, I had, oh, the Bible, hey, the Bible was my main thing. I said,
I can
I
dig
gotta read the whole Bible. I got, I said,
it.
heaven, hey, and staying in shape. You know, I was
Right?
one thing about the Marine Corps, you had to stay in shape.
Sure,
Anyway,
sure.
but I was I'm not even gonna get into so many of the things.
Mm.
But I almost went to the Quantico relays. Uh, we just didn't have enough team.
I
The
see.
team wasn't big enough, you know what I mean, to warrant sending us there.
Yes.
And when I was still in LA. However, um, So I'm not gonna get into all of that, but the war.
Yes,
But
sir.
what happened was I ended up finally back home. Oh, before we came home, we had a talent show because we on Okinawa. Because when we left Vietnam, we had to go back to Okinawa for a month or two
Yes,
before
sir.
we came back to the state, and that's when I spent a lot of time in the theater. Just by myself.
Imagining.
That's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, and one day I went out to a city called Naha City. I had never been there, so I decided to go take a look. And I'm walking down the street just by myself. Man, I hated going places just by myself. But
Mm.
anyway, I'm walking down the street, and what do I see? I ran into another homeboy. He was in the army. He was in the army. Man, I had my camera that day. I took pictures, and he was from Harrisburg, and he was
Wow.
involved in the mm, Black Panthers group.
Yes, sir.
Back, I don't know if it was after he got out or whatever, but anyway, he was popular guy. You knew him a lot, and if you lived there.
Hmm.
But anyway, he introduced me to some of his buddies on his base. So that took
Yeah.
up a lot
Made
of
a
my social
connection.
life. Yeah, you
Right.
know what I mean.
Right.
And before leaving to come back home, but I used to while I was in Vietnam, man, I used to wonder. I tried to read the whole Bible.
Hmm.
Of course, I couldn't. I couldn't even get through the Old Testament
Mm.
at that time. But anyway, but I had my Bible with me everywhere I went. It
Yes,
was
sir.
in my seat bag because my uncle was a preacher. He was a pastor uh, in Middletown, where the Pennsylvania. Anyway, um, my dad's brother
Hmm.
that brought the, everybody up to Harrisburg from South Carolina.
Yes,
We
sir.
were actually from South Carolina,
Mm.
Charleston area, and just the whole state. Well, not really the East Coast part.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, Walterboro is my dad's hometown on Route 95 going this south down there. But
Oh,
anyway, we call it Geechee country.
yes, sir.
And I'm in touch with a couple guys. They don't know this. I'm telling you. I think the name of the Geechees down there in that area. From I like to study. I like to read up on things, and this is just something that I do,
Yes, sir.
just to learn about people, my heritage, and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Um, and being in civil rights and stuff like that, which I have been in. So,
Yes.
um, but the musically, if I might refer back to Memphis again, I
Mhm.
was in the drum and bugle corps,
Yes,
but
sir.
I was told that the parade was coming up in Chattanooga,
Okay.
and I was told that blacks weren't allowed to march in the parade in Chattanooga. Mind you, this was
Oh,
in
wow.
1960.
Yes, sir.
So I quit. I quit the drum and bugle corps. I said, "You can have this drum and bugle corps. I can't march in the parade there." So I wasn't in it, and I was in the first parade there in Memphis, where
Wow.
blacks and whites could march together
Yes, sir.
in the parade.
Now, what year did
And
that happen when they could
this was in
march together?
1960. I was only in Memphis for 6 months,
I see. I see. Yes, sir. I
just
understand.
just to go to school and pass on.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
because I
let me,
joined in 1959.
in 1959, I understand. So, what happened, or when did you get the idea? Was it when you were overseas or when you came back home for Soulsville? Because you had said that early on in the Emperors, you were the one, and you thought everybody was on the same page with you, but you were the one that says, "Look, we need to be recording." Did that happen while you were still in the military, or did that idea begin to take
The
shape
recording
after
part,
you? Yeah, the recording part in Soulville specifically.
the recording part actually happened when we were in high school.
Okay,
When
gotcha.
Paul Landersman recorded us, and it was never out on a record. It was never placed with a record company. He
I
was just promoting it
I see.
off the demo.
Right. Understood.
Somebody got the demo. I don't know who it was. Uh, I never located the demo. I'm still trying to find it. Anyway, but the recording business was always a part of my vision at that time.
Yes, sir.
So when I got out and reformed with the Emperors, regrouped with the Emperors, it was my interest in us recording.
Yes,
And
sir.
we weren't. We were doing all these college engagements, etc., and all how those gigs go.
Oh yeah.
And so I started drifting away, and I didn't know what I was going to do.
Hmm.
And at that time, I wasn't even playing in a group. And Johnny Clark invited me to play for his group, so I started going to rehearsals there, and we made a few appearances at the Y again. The YMCA was the main hub of, you know, local entertainment,
Sure.
sports, and all the swimming and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
And so the last night that I was with Johnny Clark's group, it was him and his brother, his wife, and two other young ladies. One of them I knew because she sang with me in a concert group. I was a part of a unique concert singers.
Uh-huh.
We sang concert type music.
Yes, sir.
Mr. William Bill Buck, he was famous uh, Paul Robinson type singer,
Yes,
in
sir.
Harrisburg. And he was very instrumental in my music experiences as well.
Hmm.
Anyway, so to your question about Soulville, I had decided that Johnny Clark, to me, in my opinion, was a solo singer. He was starting a quintet.
Uh-huh.
However, I thought personally he should have been singing by himself.
I
And
see.
you know what I mean?
I do.
And I didn't discuss it with nobody. I just made up my mind that I was moving on. This wasn't for me.
I got you.
And but what happened was that night, here comes this other guy in the group, the saxophone player.
Mm.
His name was Gus Sullivan, Augustus, short Gus. He
Yes,
had
sir.
been in the service. I didn't know him, but I knew his brother. His brother played the organ, and he was well known in Harrisburg at the time, but he was a handicap,
I see.
and he had to have somebody with him wherever he went.
Yes, sir.
And the guy who was with him most of the time was his guitar player and his friend. They grew up together. They lived on the other side of town
Mhm.
from where I lived. I lived uptown,
Yes, sir.
and his name was Billy Coney. Billy Coney is a very, very important person to me, also, and in my whole thing that tends to get lost. But I want to mention his name
Yes, sir.
because he was a guitar player and he read music and he could play anything.
Mhm.
But Billy was also the caretaker with Danny Sullivan. And so what happened was Gus, when I was leaving this rehearsal and I had made up my mind that that was my last rehearsal,
Yes, sir.
Gus hollered at me.
Mm.
He said, "Bobby, hold up." So I paused to see what he wanted to say. He said, Bobby said, told me I had a unique style playing. And he said, we need to start a group come on, man. This, I to this day, you ain't gonna believe this, but to this day, he said we need to start a group and we need to name the Bobby Fulton Trio.
Wow.
Because you're gonna be. He said, but we was talking about an organ trio.
I understand.
He said they have these organs downtown at Jay's Troop music store.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Troop, the great songwriter. That was his uncle's store, I believe it was, or dad's store, one of them.
Wow.
But I can purchase an organ there. I didn't even have an organ. And he said, I know this young boy still in high school. Now he met at the Y. He had been to the Y, I didn't even know it. He said, and he's not in any group or anything. We can check him out, see if he'll play with us.
Mm.
And so we went to his house. Initially, I knew that God was in this. Now, this is the first thing. I knew that the Lord was beginning to take hold of my life.
Yeah.
Because Gus had no idea that I wasn't coming back.
Wow.
He didn't know that any of my plans.
Yeah.
But God knew.
Right. Absolutely.
And so we went to visit. Danny Hall was his name. Danny was 16 years old, still in high school at William Penn, the same high school I went to.
Yes, sir.
And so we went, and I asked his mother, because it was just him and his mother at the time. His father had passed.
Mm-hmm.
And she said yes, that he could play with us. Man, Danny, he reminded me of you right now. Hey, Danny was in the high school band. He was a natural, man.
Wow.
I didn't have to tell him anything.
Mm.
Danny had it together, boy. And hey, we took off. In fact, there was another guy who was in, his name was Roberts, Michael Roberts.
Mm-hmm. Somehow
or another, he played the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know this, but all this, you know how musicians, things
Absolutely.
come together somehow or another. This was on a Monday. I bought this organ. I went down to Jay's Troops and purchased this organ. It was a M100 organ that I bought. I didn't even have a speaker. It had a self-contained speaker in it at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
right.
This was on a Monday. I had never played the organ before, and we met at my house. It had been the rehearsal place for different groups, gospel and everything over the years. Anyway,
The hub.
So, yeah, 1627 Wallace Street. So, and I say that because this is all our history, you know. Anyway, hey, I said, being in the Marine Corps Air Wing, here's the Marine Corps, you know, the planes, because I was on these, particularly in the Philippines. When I was stationed in the Philippines, and I was on this airstrip. In fact, my office was on the airstrip.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And the jets would be right out there, and the helicopters, etc. They were painted like in your troop, in your squadron at the time. The planes had the colonel's name on it, different symbols on there.
Yes,
so I said, I had bought this truck. It was a panel truck for $100. It was a 1948 panel truck. I took it to Earl Shives. Man, I said, I'm going to get this truck painted high yellow, man, brightest yellow that they could find. I went, and I had this buddy who was a sign painter, man. He's a friend. He brought his clothes to my dad's cleaners, you know?
Yeah.
And we became real tight, man. And he painted up. He did all the painting on the sign. Bobby Fulton, Soulful Sounds from Soulville, because I was seeking what we had to be different. we wasn't gonna just be a also ran band. You know what I mean? So I was seeking the Lord, man, and I thought this came to my mind because I come from a praying family,
Yes,
and
sir.
Wednesday night prayer came to my mind, man.
Wow.
Wednesday night prayer in the church, they was praying for souls,
Mm.
and it was like now I didn't know much about the Holy Spirit, believe it or not, at that time, but
Yeah,
the Holy Spirit was speaking to me. I just didn't know it. You know what I mean?
I
And
do.
said, "Well, I want you take soulful sounds to the people wherever you go."
I hear
That was the beginning of Soulville, right there. This was this was in 1964.
you. Mm.
This was before Soulville Records in 1967.
Wow. Wow.
So the band, and as we went from place to place, different guys wanted to be in the band. They joined because I only had three pieces. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They found their way into the band. Come on,
I hear
hey,
you. That's
my
beautiful.
neighbor who lived down the street. My neighbor who lived down the street was the manager of this club. You know, let me tell you, you need to know about my neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
My neighborhood was I'm talking about one block. This is one block neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Directly, I tell you this first of all. Directly, my brother, who was 7 years older than me,
Mm-hmm.
almost 8, his class, Toby Young, who became my partner in Soulville Records, he was the disc jockey
Okay.
in Harrisburg that played records. And Olin Harris, who lived a couple doors down from me, this guy could sing like Arthur Prysock type
Oh,
guy, you know what I mean?
yes, sir.
And he went to this church that was directly across the street from Agar Moore. They ended up being the lead singer in the Emperors, and he didn't sing anything but gospel though.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I never got around to recording him because he became the top television anchor man in Harrisburg at that time.
Yes, sir.
Both him and Toby Young are in the um, Broadcasters Hall of Fame in Ohio. I went there. I was there that night when they got inducted, you know.
Wow. Yes, sir.
Anyway, they both passed now. However, but it's like directly across the street from my house. We used to live on Hamilton Street, which was the one side, the northern side of Harrisburg. And Hamilton Street had Hamilton School on it, which
Yes, sir.
was my house sat about 2 or 3 doors from Hamilton School. So, and directly across the street was the grocery store. And
Yes,
on
sir.
the other corner was a junkyard. Come on now. These were the four corners of my life. So
Yes.
I'm telling you this little, I'm not getting into it, but the four corners of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
we played football on that street, on Hamilton Street. Uh, had football stars that, like I said, my brother was on the other championship team in the high school. They beat Lenny Moore in Reading, PA, back then in his day before he went to the Baltimore Colts. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Willie Mims, who played and lived at my aunt's house upstairs there. And he was selected by Baltimore Colts too, but
Mm-hmm.
he, for a while that he was on it. And my brother was went to Dartmouth. He was the only minority black kid in the first, went to Ivy League school, went to Dartmouth College,
Yes,
and
sir.
he played football for Dartmouth. But he had ligaments torn in the Navy game against Navy, and that
Oh,
ended up his career in football. But
wow.
he became a coach, and he has another whole story. But I had these idols, man. I had these people before me
Yes, sir.
who was setting, I had a path to follow. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Musically and socially and Christian, everything.
Absolutely.
And my brother played the keyboards for Toby Young and Olin Harris, when they was in high school, they all graduated together. And and I have a photograph of them also, you know. And what happened was directly across the street from our house was Art Davis.
Mm.
Art Davis became the first black bass player on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show.
Wow. Wow.
I had the opportunity to see his youth,
Yes,
to
sir.
see him in his youth, bringing his bass home from school to rehearse. And my drummer, who played with the Continental Four when we were on the road with the Continental Four, lived right next door to him. You know, the houses were connected. And he talks about it now. Yeah, how he used to hear him over there rehearsing,
Wow.
man. And he played the tuba also.
Wow.
And I see him, and that's when I learned the importance. And this was way before I was even playing the keyboard. Uh, the importance of practice,
Yes, sir.
rehearsal.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man.
Amen.
And two doors to my right lived Diddy Potter. He was a well-known local, I'd say local tenor sax player. And next door to where Art Davis lived, where Randy, who played Randy Lee, he was my drummer with the Continental Four.
Yes, sir.
Now I'm jumping a little bit here.
Yes, sir.
Because what happened was uh, Soulville, this was around the time we were uh, dividing the partnership. I never stopped Soulville. In fact, they used to call me Mr. Soulville. Mr. Soulville, I'll be walking down the street, man. Mr. Soulville, good. Hey. So anyway, Soulville has been my life because I founded the Soulville.
Absolutely.
And so the Lord has kept that a part of my life, and I was the administrator of Soulville. All the logos, all that kind of stuff, all the books, all the administration part of it, I was doing because when I was, well, actually, when I got out of the service, during the service, I was in administrative roles there, like I told you, naval aviation doorkeeper.
Yeah.
And I took business management because I was going to do LaSalle Extension University correspondence.
Yes, sir.
I took that. I took 3 years doing that study. And so I would go by, I was a manager of the Jackson Lick Apartments, which is a high-rise apartments in Harrisburg. And I was leaning towards, if I hadn't been in music, I was leaning towards politics, believe it or not. Because I knew everybody. I used to say to myself, this was just private to me. I ought to be mayor of the city, so I could do what needs to be done here.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I used to say the city was my playground.
Yeah.
Because the capital state was right down 7 blocks from my house.
I see.
We lived uptown on the side of the Capitol. And but all of these people lived in our neighborhood, right in our block. The American Legion was on one corner, the Masonic Lodge. In fact, Diddy Potter's father was in there, a lodge member.
Yes, sir.
All these, the Elks, guy headed the state Elks, who lived down the street, a couple doors down. All these people were right in our block, man.
Yeah.
When we had parades, the ending of the parades would end up right past my house on Wallace Street.
Wow.
Because they would end up at the Legion, you know what I mean, right there in the corner.
Wow.
And so this is just a synopsis, really,
Yes, sir.
of my life.
Yes,
But
sir.
what happened, I was telling you about Joe Smooth.
Hmm.
He lived a couple doors down also. He was the manager of this other club. My dad's drive. We started the cleaners in our house. We changed the house. Became the presser and everything
Yes, sir.
was there one day coming home from school. My dad asked me, did I would I like to learn to press clothes? I said, yeah, I'd like to. I took that on. I learned the whole business, really. And after I got out of the service. However, what happened was hmm, Joe Smooth was the manager of Hudson's Hotel. Hudson's Hotel was uptown 6th Street. 6th Street was a main thoroughfare in Harrisburg from the Capitol uptown all the way up to the high school and beyond.
Wow.
Uh, and we were on the Susquehanna River side of town.
Yes, sir.
The river was only about 6th Street. Well, from First Street, from Front Street is the First Street. Well, the Susquehanna River runs up there. If I had the benefit of all of that, man, in my life, I felt blessed. It was just a wonderful childhood type setting, and so So I hope you can understand why I have this tendency to veer off into so many different
Yeah, there's a lot
parts
of
of my
history,
life.
man. A lot of memories on there. I
Yeah, and
I'm interested in the portion where the people are calling you Mr. Soulville, so you have the label up and running. And how many artists do you have signed to the label at that time? And then also,
okay,
please tell us with respect to the recording of the Emperors. Santana did a cover of one of your songs. I'm very interested in how those things came together.
okay. What happened was the Emperor's recording of Karate was before Soulville record. I had, like I said, what happened was very beginning was when I had the trio, and then I took on a bass player because I was playing the bass on the organ. But I felt the need to, because I continued playing the bass on the organ, but I had a regular bass player also.
Yes, sir.
And one day I was walking somewhere in downtown Harrisburg. I ran into this high school friend of mine. He played football again with me in junior high school. He was on the team. So we will go way back. But I didn't realize that he was interested in recording. So I told him that I had this band, etc. And he said, I had a recording studio in my house. He
Wow.
said, he invited me to come over and record. So I did that. He had a 4-track Ampac
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in he had a house trailer. He lived by himself.
Wow.
I couldn't get my organ in there.
Uh-huh.
So he had a spinning piano in there. So at that time I had a bass player. I had four of us. So
Hmm.
we went down there and recorded. And I said, since we from Harrisburg, we're gonna start this capital city recording company. At the time, I didn't know anything about fictitious names and all that other kind of
Sure.
stuff. I was just out there doing it. In
Yeah.
fact, for years, Soulville, before I even went downtown and registered the name, man, we was all over. in fact, in fact, one time I was driving up the street and I saw this other group. This guy, he would probably remember this. He's a drummer too, by the way, Christian drummer. and I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he was rehearsing, and they was calling themselves from Soulville.
Wow.
I went in there, and I went in there like a big shot. You know what I'm saying? You guys can't use that name. I said, that's my name,
Right, right,
Soulville.
right, right.
So that took care of that. I remember that, you know. Anyway, so
Beautiful.
uh, so what happened was one day my cousin, Milton, is my cousin, like I
Mhm.
said before.
Yes, sir.
His father and my mother are brothers and sisters. And when we used to go to New York, it would be all like in a circus car. We Everybody would be in that car, man. Milton, my sister Jackie, my cousin Marilyn, aunts and uncles, everybody going to New York. Man, we love to go to New York City. That was our favorite stomping grounds for the summer
Yes, sir.
and all year round, you know. And my aunt, she used to love to come home to Harrisburg. And twins, you know how twins are, man. They like inseparable, you
Yes,
know. So
sir.
I had all of this, and whenever they was home, it was music, 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 because
Wow.
it was music. We was always around the piano at my house. You know what I mean? You know, my aunt Lena's house around the corner, and everybody lived right around the corner from each
Sure,
other
sure.
at the time. We didn't live miles apart, you know,
Right,
stuff like that.
right,
And
right.
so those were the influences that were impacting my life, and especially when I was in New York, man. See, I wanted to move to New York right away when I was little, because we was on Seventh Avenue, man. My aunt lived right on the corner next door to the library on 115th Street and Seventh Avenue, and I always was walking up and down Seventh Avenue, you know,
Yeah,
the clubs and every that was the main drive. Before it was Martin Luther King, Martin Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, and so I wanted to move to New York. Man. My mother said, "You ain't moving to New York." Yeah.
and
So
get that
that
out of
stuck
your
in me anyway.
head.
So when I started my band, I went to New York. We put out this record. It made a lot of noise, man, in central Pennsylvania area. I was playing in every city
Wow.
just about there, uh, throughout central Pennsylvania. And I was taking the group to New York. We went to New York.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it was just, yeah, all four of us. Now, I don't know, Amer didn't go. Anyway, but the bass player, the organ player, and Gus went. We went to New York and the Ed Sullivan building.
Mm.
I went to all the different buildings, but in the Ed Sullivan building is where I met Stan Price, and I forget the other guy's name, but he was a popular producer there at that time, and Stan was working with him, and he invited me to bring the group there to record. And so what happened was, after we did that, they wanted me to stay there in New York. And at the time, you might know this guy, Derek Martin. He was uh, recording with them at that time. And at the time, he was supposed to be going to Europe. And so they invited me to go to Europe with Derek to be his keyboard.
Oh, wow.
And I said,
Excellent.
I considered it,
Yes,
you
sir.
know, because they said it was supposed to be leaving in 2 weeks or something like that. That never happened.
I see.
But what happened 6 months later, he called me after I'd gone back home and I was working in the dry cleaners with my dad. And one day at lunchtime, because I went home and he called me and asked me, was I ready to go? I said, man, I'm
Can't do
sorry,
it.
I'm not able to go now.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that.
Right,
And
right.
so the Emperor's Milton contacted me that some people was interested in recording, somebody was interested in recording the Emperors in Philadelphia,
Mhm.
but they wanted horns
Okay.
in the because it was just a trio, just the organ, bass, and drum. And They won horns charts with horns, and would I do it? So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I met with Milton and Tyrone, and we sat down. And the song was partially there. They initially had, I don't even know how that came about, but anyway, the karate needed some action in it. This is a art, from.
Sure.
And so that was my contribution. I said, we got to kick your left leg out, pull it back again, so we have some. Is this going to be a dance too? You
Right,
know what
right,
I mean?
right.
So, and so I had to write. Believe it or not, this was my very first time at writing horns. I didn't even know really how to write horns. Believe it or not, this is the aspects of it. I just knew they had to be transposed.
Yes, sir.
And I had in my reading, I saw this little thing called a lightning arranger. I learned my arrangement from that lightning arranger.
Wow. Wow.
And I wrote the charts for that. And we went to Philadelphia, man, by 8 o'clock in the evening. And we only had 4 songs to record. And so I wrote those out, and we went there, and had it copyrighted.
Yeah, of course.
When we went to the studio, our songs were all copyrighted and everything. But here I didn't put my name on it.
I see.
I thought at the time my thinking was wrong, I guess, that I couldn't be in both groups because there'd be clashes and stuff. And I had all kinds of engagements going on, and I didn't even put my name on it.
Wow.
So I blame myself. I don't have no thing. Anyway,
Sure.
Because we had to sign the contracts that day. What happened was we was in the studio, and that song, it was just excitement in the studio that night. All night, we was in the studio all night long till 6 o'clock in the morning. But in the middle, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we called up George Wilson was his name to the studio. Man, you got to come over here and hear this. And he came over, and hey, next thing you know, we were in. I don't know what happened. Yeah, we were in the radio station. We had to go straight to the radio station.
Wow.
And he called up all his friends, and but I got this record coming out. I want you to burn it up. And
Right.
and he signed the group. I refused to sign because I was thinking of Soulville
I
at the
see.
time.
I see.
Moving in there.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so that's how karate came about.
I see.
And as I was saying, a little while longer, this was in 1966. In fact, no, yeah, 1966, I believe it was 65, 66. Anyway, one day I was at my house. I think I had told you some of this other stuff about Huey Diggs and his brothers. They were like a whiners group.
Yes, sir.
I knew some of them individually. I didn't know they were brothers. But one day I saw them at a church singing, and I saw Huey. I said, that Huey, man, he was professional. Out of the whole group, I could see him could be a single artist. And at that time, my mind was on all these great singers, man, that I was experiencing in the church. Yeah. John White, he was so many of these people are gone. I wish I had some type of history of them like you're doing.
Yes, sir.
And but he was the choir director at our church, Greater Zion. But he had formed a group called the Hallelujah Chorus, man. And they had singers from every church.
Wow.
All over the city there, in the Hallelujah Chorus was second to none, man. They had all these singers. And that's when the recording thing became deep, embedded in me, man.
Yeah.
I got to record these people. Somebody has to record these people. And so what? And Gloria Spencer, she was big. You know, they're big locally. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sir.
And
Yes, sir.
uh, so what happened was Huey came knocking at my door one day. The door knock, I went to it, and it was Huey Diggs standing at my door. He
Wow.
didn't even have no, he didn't have any idea of what he meant to me.
Yes, sir.
What he didn't know anything. In fact, I never ever told him, and I feel
Wow.
bad about that. I
Wow.
never told him what he meant to me.
Yes, sir.
In fact, we were so involved in the record company of recording these other artists that we didn't get recorded.
Wow.
He or I at the time after we did one thing, but we was busy taking care of all this other business.
Sure.
And hey, but he should have been recorded first. You know what I mean?
Understood.
Because he was like Philly. I'm thinking the guy at Philly that got hurt. Yeah, anyway, so but Huey was a guy that wanted to be a preacher, I believe.
I see.
But Huey, his life, he had come before me, but he got caught up in a lot of other aspects of life. You know what I mean?
I do.
But Huey was total professional, man. He looked it. He carried himself that way. He sang, you know. He was always on time. He loved the business, man.
Yes.
He wanted to be a part of, because when he knocked on my door, he had just, I guess, decided to leave the Garnett Mims and the Enchanters. They was a big group at that time, and he was a part of that group. And here he was knocking on my door, man.
Wow.
And at the time, he told me, he said, Toby Young had told him that I was in the record business and that a few of them wanted to be in the record business with me. And the Holy Spirit, this is something like a light came on in my head, man. Said, yeah, I said, I am in the record business. I had just put out a record at that time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On Capital City label. I just put out that record, but I was just learning the business, you know, essentially producing. I was, you know, working with a few little groups. I had a female group that used to come to my house, lived in the neighborhood. We was just getting started at that time. But that was the beginning of Soulville. And things was, you know how people talk. It was just talk initially.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I said, that's just talk. This was important to me. That's when I went downtown. I went downtown to the courthouse. I said, how do you do this? Hey, man, they told me what to do. I did it. Next thing I know, Soulville was established.
Right.
It was in the paper. Next thing I know, here come everybody running to my door, man. Hey, we better be a part of this while it's getting started.
Amen.
And that's what happened with Soulville. And then we met because I had this panel truck. I didn't have it at the time. Because what happened between the record company, Soulville Records, and the Emperors and my band, during that little gap in there was another group called the Soul Exotic. They were a self-contained group. They had 4 singers, 2 brothers. They were a quartet. And they had a band, 4-piece band. Billy Coney was in that band. He was the band leader. But they didn't have an organ. So I saw myself. I said, but they was show group, man. They was the number one show group I believe around. You know what I mean? They
Yes.
did a different type of show, more like the shows of today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so, but they didn't have any record. They weren't recorded at all. But they had been a part of this. It was a popular group, but you know how you had the wrong names.
Yeah.
They had one of them names, one of them N kind of names,
Mm.
uh, and that people laughed about and made jokes of
Ah,
and stuff like
wow.
that. But
Yes, sir.
they were popular, man, and they because they put on a show. Anyway, and they used to joke about it when we be traveling and stuff like this. And
Yeah.
we opened for the Rascals, and so we had to have police escorts. Then we was moving and things like that. So I said, "Hey, I'm gonna take you to Philly to this same guy that put out the Emperor,
Hmm.
producer." We went and auditioned for him. He put out records on us, and
Wow.
I took it to New York. Me and Woody. Woody, he was the lead singer of this group, and the So Exotic. And he and I went back to junior high school
Mm.
because, as I was saying, we had the championship football team, and we was just in all the athletics. And he went to Catholic school,
Yes, sir.
and we didn't play each other at all. But he hung out. I'd bump into him on the street, and he'd always be hazing me about what he's gonna do to me when we get to senior high school and stuff like this. I
Sure.
didn't actually play anymore in high school because it was music and working in the cleaners and all that other kind of stuff. Anyway, so but Woody and I became the best of friends.
Yeah. Wow.
Woody and the Soul Exotics, I became the organist for their group. We went to Philly. We ended up recording, and we made this song, "Baby It's True." Baby It's True. Thank God that I've been blessed to make it this far. But in 2022, "Baby It's True" was one of the was utilized somewhere in the Academy Award winning movie CODA.
Wow.
CODA, CODA, that had Marvin Gaye and my other favorite singer, that my
Mm.
mind again.
I
The,
understand.
but anyway, um, Etta James. Etta
Mm.
James and Marvin Gaye had the biggest tunes in there, but I was listed as got credits for song on
Very
CODA.
cool. Wow.
This was from way back then, man. Anyway, but several of our songs made the movie, made TV somewhere. Anyway,
That's
but
beautiful.
what happened, and this has just happened in recent years, the last 3 or 4, 5 years, within the last 5 years, these things happen. And
Yes.
um, but you was asking me, so that was the Emperors. And
Hmm. I was wanting to know how many artists total were signed by
oh,
Soulville.
so recently I put out the that I put out that the Soulville All-Stars,
Yes, sir.
because I had this vision that all artists on Soulville, that like the Motown Review,
Correct.
I was gonna have a review, but everybody who ever appeared on that review was gonna be considered a Soulville All-Star.
Understood. Yes, sir.
And so that's where the Soulville All-Stars came from.
Hmm.
And that's my company right now. That's that part of that. And
Absolutely. And
and
then, but do you
guys,
you do you know how Carlos Santana came about recording their own version of karate?
so this is what happened was this is what I surmised and what I have facts on is that see, Phil Gaber was the primary producer. He got the credit for the producing of the karate. However, one half of the production, George Wilson, who was the manager of WHAT at that time, he became the main producer for the business because of who he was in the business. And his publishing company took over the publishing of karate. They were the primary publisher.
Yes, sir.
At some time, George Wilson, I can't tell you exactly every little detail, but he sold Antaresco, something like that, the publishing company, to Jamie.
Okay.
Jamie was almost like the biggest in Philadelphia. His father, that was the name of the company, but it was owned by, and mind you, I can't think all these names, all this stuff is rushing through my mind.
I understand.
But they were the big distributors in Philadelphia at that time. He was a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
And that's and that company grew anyway, but Santana, I believe, was signed with the guy who had Whitney Houston. You got to help me because
Clive Davis.
Yeah, Clive Davis.
Yes, sir.
He was with Clive Davis. And through that relationship,
Arista Records, I think, at the time.
Yeah, right. Through that relationship, I don't know, Santana, must have heard it.
Sure.
And he took a liking to that. And what happened was, you know how it is to work. You have to change it some kind of way to add,
of course,
lyrics to add your part to it.
Yes,
how
sir.
you want it to be. So that's what happened. It became everybody's everything.
Yeah.
And but they had to give credit to the writers of the song.
Yes,
so that's how karate became a part of everybody's everything. And got the credit for all of that.
Gotcha.
So that's essentially out of that. But they never, I wasn't never mentioned there whatsoever about that. And at that time, until recently, after I got into all of this research and stuff that I've done over the years, this is how I come to know more than what people even know that I know.
Understood. And I must make a correction because I believe that at that time that Clive Davis was not yet, he had not yet formed Arista Records. It was Columbia Records that he was president of when Santana was signed to him, if my memory is on that. The only other thing that I would ask today, because you and I can talk for another 4 hours and it would be like nothing, no problem. But with respect for the podcast interview, the present group as there are now, I want to say the Emeralds, but I know that's not the name. The Emperors, the present group. Do you have any ties to them? I mean, how did it end up in the formation of what you built come to the Emperors now? Was there any? Did you have any direction in that regard, or? I hope I'm asking the question correctly.
You're asking a good question.
Yeah.
The question is that I have always been a part of the Emperors.
Yes, sir.
Even when I wasn't singing there with the Emperors, I have kept the whole history of all of most of the news and stuff, the articles, all of that has come through me.
Gotcha.
I have been in touch with everybody, even when the Hall of Fame they contacted me.
Yes, sir.
About it. I called everybody else together. We ended up with all of the people who had been a part of the Emperors. There was about 10 or 11 of us, you know,
Yeah.
at the Hall of Fame. It was
Excellent.
just beautiful to
Excellent.
me, and even now with Soulville, there's talk of, I'm in touch with people who want to carry on Soulville in
Excellent.
Harrisburg.
Excellent.
Uh,
Excellent.
my suggestion, I said that I will consult with
Yes, sir.
them, and I've made some suggestions that they make it Soulville too,
Okay.
because there's so much uh, that is involved with Soulville,
Yes, sir.
the original, which I am a part of,
Yes, sir.
and
So it'll be
that I
like
don't
the
even want to put
little,
that
it'll be
name.
like the little emperors. So,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
had.
yeah,
So
right.
this is Soulville too. I dig it. That's beautiful.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
beautiful.
So
Wow.
that that's what's going on now with that. I
Uh,
met with them recently
yes, sir.
in Harrisburg. In fact, when I was there for the Soulville All-Stars induction in
Yeah.
Lancaster in March of this year, when
Yes,
they
sir.
were inducted.
Absolutely. Well, like I said before, Brother Bobby, we could talk for another 4 hours and it would mean nothing, for us. But I appreciate you giving us the time to document, personally your experiences from behind the scenes of things we would not know if we just go to Google and
Yeah, I
look up the
understand.
emperors or Soulville. You're giving us the firsthand experience, and that's very vital. And as I said before, this will not be our only conversation. I mean, there's so much. We haven't yet got into you being called into the pastorate and your ministry. So that's a whole nother chapter that it's another chapter that we have to get
But
into.
let me tell you this.
We
Let
will.
me just tell you
Sure.
this.
Sure.
When God called me to the ministry
Yes, sir.
on the mountaintop, the Lord said to me, "There's one thing I want you to do for me. I want you to tell, this is me," I said, I
Mm,
guess, tell the world what he's done for me and what he will do for them, for you,
yeah.
if you seek him as I did. And he said, what I want you to do, he said, what you was doing for Soulville, I want you to do it for me.
Right.
That's been the connection, man, from up high,
Yes, sir.
Soulville, gospel connection. And
Mm,
that's been, and God gave me a word. And I don't mind sharing this because uh, I wasn't, when I was doing my research for my dissertation, I wasn't even able to find anything on this at the time.
mhm.
Since a few things have come up, but basically from the Catholic Bishop St. Thomas of
Mm,
Aquinas was the only one that I could find, and a couple other writers, two or three, but St. Thomas de Aquinas of
yes, sir.
Aquinas. That's where he was from. Like I'm from Soulville, he was from Aquinas. That's
Yeah.
how he got that added to his name. And he mentioned spiritology.
Mm,
The Lord, when I was writing uh, my dissertation theologically, the Lord said that one day I was asking, what is this all about? Because I had no idea. I didn't really know where I was going. The Lord said, we have a spiritualogical relationship.
mm.
And that's just opened the whole world. This was years after he had already called me, and I'd been in the ministry for a while, but I was studying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I said, spiritualogical relationship. You know how people are on these words.
Yeah.
Some, in fact, this word is kind of sounded like, um, you know how people are about
Oh yeah.
words. I just
Oh
don't
yeah.
want
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Lord said, spirit is me. I am the spirit.
Hmm.
And you are logical human beings. That's all you are, just logical people are logical human beings. But in order for you to relate to me, that's why I sent my son. That's why he sent Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ, I said, how did Christ get in there? He's a little old between spirit and logic. Between spirit and logical person, I looked it up. The little O represents a connective. He is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega.
Yes, sir.
Come on now.
Yes, sir.
I hope you understand this.
I understand.
And this is where this word comes from, spiritual relationship.
The bridge, the mediator.
The bridge, yes. The gospel connection, the connection between Soulville and the gospel. Come on. And that's what.
If you keep going, though, you're going to open up another conversation that we have to have next time.
Okay. All right, sir.
Well, that's where we'll pick that up where we left off.
Okay, sir.
But today, I'm grateful for the time that you've given us, and this is a long form video that we'll put out on the Entre Musician podcast, and people will be able to enjoy it, learn some history, find out what you built, where you came from, and also to know where you're going. And then in our part 2 conversation, we'll get into where you are now in the pastorate, from the ministry, and you'll share your experiences from that perspective. Is that cool?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm honored. I'm blessed to just be able to share whatever I'm able to share for the next generations.
Absolutely. Well, you've been a blessing to us today. Know that. And I'm grateful that you would just allow me to be that person that captures this rich history. It's a legacy. And not only for Black music, soul music, rock and roll, it's just your contribution has just been like that ground, that everybody else who my age and under who stands on what you've built. And you've been a part of the foundation. I truly appreciate that. Absolutely.
Well, if I might say this, all the people's names that I was able to mention, and there's been so many more people. I am just a product of all these many people that contribute to my life, man. I just wish I could mention everybody, but I couldn't do anything without them. And I thank God for allowing them to be a blessing to me.
Yes, sir.
And I thank them, past and present.
Absolutely.
And if I might wish the best to all of those coming after us.
Definitely.
Carrying on, man. But remember the God's in the front.
Amen.
That's where Christ is out front leading the way.
Yes, sir.
1 Timothy 2:5, by the way. There's one God and one mediator between God and men, the man, and Christ Jesus. Come on, boy. Give God a hand clap. Thank you, Lord Jesus.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Bob.
I have to do that, man.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You have a blessed day.
Thank you, sir.
Certainly.
Wasn't that an incredible conversation? Bobby Fulton of the legendary group The Emperors, and also the founder of Soulville-Jaywalking Records. What an incredible man. And as you can tell, he is really on what's happening and was able to share some memories that you can see that he really, really cherished. And what a blessing it was for us to listen to that. It won't be the last time, by God's grace, that we talk to Bobby Fulton. There's so much more that we could pull from him. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked this video. I hope you subscribe to our channel. Matter of fact, why don't you go ahead and subscribe right now? Don't wait. And please ring that notification bell so you will know when more content is coming at you from the Entre Musician. I say it all the time. My name is Jerry B. I am the Entre Musician, that's for sure. But the most important thing is, so are you. We will see you again next time.